Good evening. Welcome to the public statement hearing on Veolia Water New York, Inc. Rate proceeding case 23-W0111. Please note your line is muted. The hearing will begin shortly. If you are experiencing technical difficulties, please call 1-800-342-3330. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's now 5 o'clock. Mr. McLean, are you ready to go on the record?
Yes, Joanna, we are on the record.
Thank you. I call case 23-W0111, proceeding on motion of the Commission as to the rates, charges, rules, and regulations of Veolia Water New York, Inc. for water service. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ashley Moreno. I am an administrative law judge for the Department of Public Service. With me today is Michael Clark, also an ALJ with the Department of Public Service, and together we are responsible for presiding over the hearings in this case and the development of a complete record throughout the proceeding. This is a public statement hearing that was noticed on April 14, 2023. The hearing concerns proposed changes in the water delivery rates and practices of Veolia Water New York, Incorporated. More specifically, Veolia seeks to consolidate rates for customers in the former Suez Water New York, Inc. systems in Rockland and Orange counties and the former Suez Owego-Nichols system and Heritage Hills system, which would comprise the New York district, and continue the progression towards rate harmonization in rate districts 1 and 2 in the former Suez Water Westchester system, which would comprise the Westchester district. Veolia also is proposing to increase its delivery revenues by approximately $18.4 million in the New York district and by about $14.1 million in the Westchester district. Under New York state law, the Public Service Commission must consider a utility's proposal and may adopt or reject it in whole or in part or modify it. We are holding this hearing so that you can provide your comments on Veolia's proposal for the Commission's consideration. Ultimately, the Public Service Commission will decide what the terms and conditions of Veolia's service will be. The Public Service Commission consists of 7 members, the chairperson, Roy Christian, and Commissioners Diane Berman, James Alisi, Tracy Edwards, John Howard, David Zaleski, and John Majori. And we are fortunate, I see that Commissioner Majori is with us this afternoon. Commissioner, would you like to address the participants?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to be here. I look forward to hearing what people have to say. I'd like to thank everybody who's taken time out of their afternoon to participate in this process. You know, as a commissioner, and I speak for the other commissioners as well, the input that we get to hear from these types of public statement hearings, it's important as we consider items that come before us. So I'm ready to sit back and listen to what folks have to say. And again, I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their schedules to participate. Thank you very much, Judge.
Thank you. And I believe we're expecting Chair Christian as well, and he may be joining us in just a little bit, and I'm sure that he will be eagerly listening to all of the comments this evening as well. So with that, as I stated earlier, the purpose of today's hearing is to provide you with an opportunity to tell the Commission your thoughts on the proposal. It's not an evidentiary hearing or a question and answer forum, but really an opportunity for us to hear from you. Any statements that you make today will become part of the case record. We do have a court reporter joining us who will prepare a transcript of the hearing, which again will be included in the official case record of the proceeding so that your comments can be considered by all of the Commission. When it's ready, the transcript will be available for viewing on the Department of Public Service website. And I would like to just stress as well that this is not the only opportunity for comment. If you do not wish to speak at today's hearing, but you would like your views included in the record, there are a variety of other ways to comment that were listed in the public notice for today's event. And if I could ask the folks from our Office of Consumer Services, if you could just advance the slide one, please. There are a number of other ways that you can submit the comments. For those of you who are participating electronically, those are on your screen. You can do so by submitting comments on the department's website, by email, regular mail, or by phone. And regardless of how your comments are submitted, they will be given equal consideration. Comments may be submitted and will be considered throughout the case. And in addition to these different ways to comment, I will also note that we are hosting additional public statement hearings on May 17th at 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So turning back to today, we have several people who are registered to speak this afternoon. We will not impose a time limit, but will request that your statement be within a reasonable amount of time so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. We have folks who are registered and are participating by phone and folks who are participating electronically. In either case, please just make sure that you have one audio input from one device. Otherwise, we may experience some problems with feedback. I will call the persons that have registered one by one to speak. If someone is not available when I call them, I will continue on to the next person, and we will come back at the end to see whether the folks who were not available are now available. For telephone participants, when I call your name, I'll ask that you press *3 on your telephone so that we can recognize you and unmute your line. It might just take us a moment to locate you. So please be sure to wait until you hear a beep or are notified that your line has been unmuted before you start your statement. And for folks who have registered electronically, when I call your name, we will unmute your line. You should hear a tone and see that the microphone icon is no longer red. And just be reminded that if you've connected by your telephone, to make sure that line is unmuted. I will start by calling on members of the public who've registered to speak, and then we will move on to individuals who have registered to speak who are parties to the proceedings. As parties, you just have greater privileges and opportunities to build the record in this proceeding, and so we'll ask you to summarize any lengthy statement that you might have. So when your line has been unmuted, please state your name and speak slowly and clearly so that the court reporter can accurately record your statement for the record. If you are speaking on behalf of an organization, please just provide the name of that organization as well. So with that, our first speaker is Jackie Dressler. And if you have called in, if you could press *3 on your phone, that will help us to identify you and unmute your line. Okay. Not seeing anyone. Doris Madronero. And again, if you've joined us by phone, if you could press *3. Okay, we'll move on to Leanne Devine. And again, if you've called in, I think we have Leanne Devine. Your line has been unmuted.
Yeah. This is Doris Madronero. Can you hear me or?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so am I the speaker up next, or I know you had called another person in the meanwhile?
Why don't you go right ahead and we'll go to them next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just as an FYI, I have to thank your colleagues. I tried getting on the phone connection earlier at the 1 o'clock hearing, and apparently the password is not appropriately posted on your website. So perhaps other people had a similar situation. And I just moments ago had a phone call to give me a usable password. So that's something just to make certain that you get that out into the public domain would be great. I listened a little bit on the YouTube because I couldn't listen in live earlier at the 1 o'clock hearing. And the one thing that strikes me is when speakers address the commission, and I will do that myself. My name is Doris Madronero, and I have no financial affiliation whatsoever other than that of a ratepayer and a taxpayer in Rockland County, ratepayer to Veolia. Have lived in the county well over 60 years. I don't want to go into the actual number. I grew up here, but I think it's important that people understand when a person is speaking, addressing the commission or writing to the commission on the topic, that they give full disclosure, whether or not they are an employee, whether they have an investment in the company, whether they are the recipient of one of these charitable donations that are being spoken about by the company. And if so, not to declare what that amount is or who it is that was given to, rather just in full disclosure to let people know that you do have an interest, a direct interest in the company's rate case. And the other thing is, I think that's important. I'm curious, when calling the consumer line earlier in the day to try to get information on why I couldn't access the call-in, the number then, when 800, I wound up getting complaints. And the voicemail on that indicates to the caller, if you have a complaint about water quality, call the Department of Health. And that rings true because we know that water for drinking and fire suppression, the authority in New York State public law is given to the Department of Health. That's also the entity we know that can declare a drought, not the Public Service Commission. And I'm just curious why the Department of Health is not an active participant in a rate case that also speaks to water quality. We know that PFAS is something that the company Veolia got an extension as far as putting in appropriate filtration. And the Department of Health, I think, should be a part of this process, a direct part of the process, and not just as a witness from the local Rockland County Health Department. If they're participating in this, I'm not quite sure. I think also, just as an aside, a little bit of the history, although I've lived here a long time, I certainly don't go back to the 1800s. But the water in Rockland County that we depend so greatly on, Lake DeForest, the Hackensack River, really was identified. The Hackensack Water Company bought the Spring Valley Water Company, not for Rockland County. They bought it for Bergen County. And somehow when we consider water, we're not looking at the watershed of Rockland County. Much of that water is going to New Jersey because it was bought by the Hackensack Water Company for Bergen County. They bought out a failing Spring Valley Water Company. The Lake Tapan, much of which sits in Rockland County, is not for Rockland County residents. Now, I heard people speak about the taxes that are paid by the water company, by the utility. If I'm not mistaken, all of that money, those taxes, are charged back in the rates. So they're not paying for the taxes, the ratepayers are paying for the taxes, and I hope that listeners pay attention to that. But I'm curious, in Lake Tapan, part of it is in Orangetown part, I think, goes into Clarkstown, most of it Orangetown. Again, we don't get water from that. They're paying tax on that, and I hope that that property tax is not going to New York taxpayers, but going to New Jersey taxpayers, rather ratepayers, because it's water that they are using, and the company is maintaining it for New Jersey, not for New York, even though a large portion is in Rockland County. I will put comment in writing, but what struck me earlier today was that there is no disclosure of any of the speakers with regard to whether they have an affiliation with the company at all. I'll let my comments end there, and thank you for the time to speak, and let you carry on.
Thank you very much. And if I could please ask you to press *3 again on your telephone, that'll just help us to identify other call-in users. Okay, our next speaker will be Leanne Devine. And if you have called in, if you could press *3 on your telephone, that will allow us to identify you. Okay, we will move on to Jacqueline Dressler. And I do not see that person. We'll move on to Jocelyn DiCrescenzo. And again, if you've called in, if you could press *3 on your telephone. And we'll move on to Joanna Dickey. And if I could just ask that Ms. Dickey's line is unmuted, please. Ms. Brown Anderson, are you able to unmute Joanna Dickey, please?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm trying to unmute her, but it seems, I'm not sure if she's unmuting herself. She's muting herself, because each time I unmute, it goes right back
Oh,
to being
okay.
on mute. I'm going to try again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I believe your line has now been unmuted. Ms. Dickey? We're just having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Can you start again, please?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay now? I don't have great reception where I am.
Oh, now we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Joanna Dickey, and I'm an environmental educator who grew up in Rockland, and I've continued to work here for the past 20 years. You can still hear me okay? I might ask you a couple times.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. As part of my work, I teach stream and river ecology to youth and communities. I've been a member of 2 local watershed groups and participate in citizen science biological monitoring projects in our waterways. As an educator, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the young people of this county and wish to address sustainability and climate change. Veolia takes pride in being a leader in sustainability. It claims itself to be the, quote, benchmark company for ecological transformation, unquote. They talk a very good talk. They have impactful marketing videos and language on sustainability with music and imagery that pull on your heartstrings and make you see how dire our human situation on this planet really is. Veolia leads you to feel like we are all in this together. Just spend 10 minutes on their website and you will think this company has good practices. But the tragic truth is that it's all greenwashing. It's all just marketing, smoke and mirrors. Their corporate behavior is proof that their #1 concern is dollars for their shareholders, not the health of the environment, not the health of the water they distribute to their customers, and certainly not the future of our planet. I'm very concerned about the persistent water quality issues Last summer, we had terrible drought conditions with uncontrollable algal blooms in many of our lakes, and with climate change, these conditions are being predicted to only get worse. Despite recurrent problems with the algae in Lake DeForest, Veolia has failed to take a proactive approach to protect the reservoir and improve our drinking water quality. What about the toxic PFAS chemicals? Will the planned filtration systems filter out all of them? Why is it taking so many years to install the filtration? Has Veolia pursued federal funding for cleaning up the PFAS, or are they going to rely on the Rockland ratepayers to once again be saddled with this financial burden just because we have a private water utility? As an educator, I'm appalled at Veolia's ineffective conservation plans. They are wasting ratepayer money on ineffective programs, and they have failed to target the areas that would have the most impact, especially like summer lawn watering. I do believe that if there were measures put in place, we wouldn't have had such bad drought conditions last summer in Rockland. Veolia has failed to plan for climate impacts. Their neglectful behavior shows that they don't care about sustainability. What steps have they taken to ensure that our water supply will be resilient in the face of extended droughts? What about higher temperatures that impact water quality and intense precipitation that does not recharge our aquifers? The biggest issue of all here is accountability. Veolia is failing on so many fronts. We have a water monopoly in this county, and the public is the only accountable source of feedback for their performance. I ask the PSC, what measures will you put in place to ensure that they do what they say and they say what they do? And how do we know that you will enforce them? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Peggy Kurtz. And your line has been unmuted.
Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. So my name is Peggy Kurtz, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Rockland Water Coalition. I'm an appointed member of the Rockland County Water Task Force, and I'm speaking on behalf of Sierra Club Atlantic chapter with 40,000 members and Rockland Sierra Club. I want to thank the commissioners for attending. I want to mention that several others have told me that they were not able to get into the hearing this afternoon or this evening, despite following all the directions. I want to primarily focus on climate change, but I just want to start by just saying a few words, and I am going to submit comments in writing. I just want to briefly touch on the merger of rates with the upstate communities. In the previous rate case, Veolia, acquired and then merged Rockland with two smaller water companies that are in need, their words, of significant upgrades and capital investment. Now the company proposes to merge our rates with the rationale that it will spread out the impacts of expensive infrastructure upgrades over a larger rate base. In other words, to spread out the costs on Rockland ratepayers. The company will profit from a higher rate of return on those capital expense projects. Rockland ratepayers will share the costs of the upgrades for upstate communities. Furthermore, the company states their intention to acquire more of these smaller systems. Something is wrong with this picture. Perhaps the state needs to set up a fund for these smaller systems, but it is patently wrong to spread the costs on other communities that are already paying among the highest water rates in the state and are about to face over $66.5 million in extra cost in infrastructure upgrades for the PFAS filtration systems. Okay, now I want to address climate change, address other topics next week and in writing. As I'm sure you're aware, conditions such as climate change can deeply affect both our water supply and our rates. As a party to the rate case, I asked about Veolia's plans for climate impacts on our water supply. The answer I received is basically that there is currently no climate planning process for Rockland's water supply and no anticipated problems. I was sent a link to the Veolia corporate website where I found not a report on how the company plans to meet the challenges of climate change, but rather a public opinion survey, hardly what I was looking for. In fact, in the company's long-term strategy report for the period through 2032, the only mention of climate change is that the company has no plans for the impact of climate on water infrastructure. Several of us were recently told by DPS, by the staff, that no climate planning for water is going on internally. And yet the Public Service Commission is one of the key agencies tasked with implementation of the climate leadership, the CLCPA. And yet we are in the midst of an all hands on deck effort to meet urgently needed state climate goals. Something needs to change here. That this just doesn't make any sense, that the Public Service Commission and DPS are not fully engaged with climate planning for water as well as for other sectors. The State of New Jersey Climate Report lays out some of the projected impacts on water supply. Rockland County, in case some people don't know, is on the border with northern New Jersey, and we experience the same conditions. That report cites a projected increase in temperature between 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit at the low end to 9 to 10 degrees at the high end. These are extreme conditions. They write, as summer temperatures, this is, I'm quoting, as summer temperatures increase in northeastern United States and rainfall remains relatively unchanged, the frequency and intensity of short-term, very dry to drought conditions are likely to increase. They also point out that irrigation and residential water usage are likely to increase at the same time as drought. They state that the summer of 2022 included the hottest 31-day period in recorded climate history in parts of New Jersey, and they conclude, extreme heat and changes in precipitation are likely to produce more summers like 2022. Just to summarize, some of the widely agreed upon climate impacts on drinking water supply include, and I'm talking about scientifically agreed upon, higher temperature, as I just stated, and increased frequency of extended or even flash droughts, while at the same time resulting in increased demand for water. More intense precipitation will result in more runoff and decreased replenishment of groundwater. We can also expect water quality impacts. Flooding can result in contamination of water supply with toxic chemicals, bacteria, and turbidity. Increased temperature is also one of the key factors leading to algal blooms, but at the same time, the company, as Joanna mentioned, is failing to take proactive steps to reduce the chemicals which also contribute to the algae. There's also the potential for destruction of water infrastructure due to extreme weather. And finally, I'd mention the likelihood of increased flooding from the reservoir itself, which has experienced severe flooding in the past of the surrounding neighborhoods. At the same time, there are also significant opportunities in the water sector for energy and water use reduction through effective water conservation and efficiency. Even more significant, though, I really want to mention that when water supply options are depleted, if we are not planning adequately for these conditions, when demand rises and supply is constrained, utilities may be tempted to turn to wastewater reuse, which is extremely energy intensive, and that is clearly the wrong direction in an age of climate change. That is why the coalition is doing everything we can to advocate for sustainable water policies. I'm here today to ask the Commission to begin the process of climate planning for water utilities. A good first step would be to plan internally and to reorient the direction of staff to look for sustainable water plans, and then to require climate plans for both adaptation and mitigation from all water utilities. The climate planning should include all of the elements mentioned above. That planning should also include a reevaluation of safe yield and an update of safe yield, which has not been done for Rockland in many years. Updated drought management plans. I realize this does not fall entirely under the purview of the company, but the company should be directed to work with the county to make that happen. and water conservation plans that are reviewed by independent experts. I'll talk about that more next week, but the water conservation plans that are currently in place are not the most effective. They are not as effective as they could be, and there have been fixes that have been pointed out over and over again by experts in previous rate cases that have been completely ignored. We can and we must do better to meet the very real challenges ahead and to build resilience in the face of extreme heat and other extreme weather. I could keep going by quite a bit, but I will stop here to give time for others to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker will be Lori Seaman. And just bear with us a moment while we unmute your line. Okay, your line has been unmuted.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity to bring our comments to bear on the ability of the commission and the DPS staff to work with the submission of the Veolia, the water company. My name is Lori Seaman, and I'll speak to you quickly about my water background. I'm an appointed member of the Rockland County Task Force on Water Resources Management. I was on the Groundwater Stormwater Committee for a number of years. I am the founder of the Sparkill Creek Watershed Alliance, a member of the Minnesiongo Creek Watershed Alliance, and last but not least, I'm the founder and director of Strawtown Studio, which for 20 years has run arts-based, environmental-based education in our county. I'm very familiar with the streams and waterways and the water systems of Rockland. I've taken kids on tours of the wastewater plants and to the headwaters down to the river. And I've been part of this, an active member of this working group that is dedicated to bringing connection to the disconnections of the Rockland County water, which has been really evading, I think, the Public Service Commission. There's a tremendous disconnection between all of the layers of water, and we have been tremendously concerned about this. And we're here today to please ask you to hear these comments. It's significant. I believe the DPS PSC has tremendous excellence, in the areas of financial analysis, the cost of materials, the cost of financing. But over the years, what we're seeing is that there's just absolutely an absence of certain kinds of knowledge within the system there to be able to adequately analyze the submissions that are brought before you. And one thing is that water is very different than the other systems that the commission has technically or typically been charged with. And we're looking to find out, okay, so I'm looking to find out, why is this? Why does it feel like there's this absence of talent on board there to meet the needs of these submissions? Is it unawareness on the part of the staff? Is it disinterest? Has it been misguided? What is it? And what can be changed? So this is what I have found, some simple, almost obvious steps that could be taken to better uphold the commission's obligations to both the public and the corporate private interests. What I have learned is that at the commission and DPS, I'm never sure which way to use the language here, that water is relatively small compared to the energy, the steam, the telecom, and it's a very small fraction, maybe 2% of New York State has privatized water. And what I'm saying is, it should not matter how small that percentage is, because irregardless of the percentage in the state, the rate case hearings have the same amount of complexity. And with water, maybe even more complexity, because water is very different than utilities of other types. Water is something that can't be manufactured. and it's really locally based. And it really flows through every aspect of life in a place. And it has a whole layering system of knowledge base that one must possess to adequately analyze the submissions that are before you. And I've really seen that there's a lot of gap there. I just believe it's beyond the scope of the commission to provide adequate oversight with all these layers in-house. So what else could you do? You could bring in expertise. But I've been on this water system for many years now, and we don't see the commission bring in any expertise outside. Even when we have written in comments and been on hearings before, helping to identify where expertise is needed. In the no desalination case, it was 1 second, please, Bruno. In the desalination question, the expert who looked at at that time Suez said it was appalling that there was no expertise within the commission on non-revenue water, and there is no expertise on public outreach. The company is submitting all kinds of statements saying that they're doing a lot of education and public outreach. You've already heard from prior speakers. This, in fact, is not effective here. There are other systems too. Just when they put in systems, they need new pumps and pipes. This is great. You can cross-analyze their submissions, but you don't have anybody in the commission to look at the whole systematic decision-making mechanism. Why are they choosing that? Where is the cost-benefit analysis to the company versus to the health of the system versus to the ratepayer? There's an absolute absence of expertise on staff to interpret those submissions. And absent all of that type of staff, the climate change, I don't have to explain that, it's already been done tonight. The climate change is something that is, it's like red alert. And the commission's mission statement online talks about environmental mandate. Veolia again talks about it. This is completely absent, and everything is just calling out for a cohesive look at all of this. I can't say much now, but the DEC, the EPA, the DOH, it's just a round robin. Everybody points to the next one. And honestly, it doesn't have to be like that. We are a citizens group that has been putting the big lens on all of this, and we are talking to all the different players. So you don't have experts coming on board to help fix the problem. What else could happen? Well, competition in the marketplace. But we don't have competition in the marketplace in water here in Rockland County. It's a natural monopoly. That's how water is here. And so usually competition can bring in accountability mechanisms. It's like a watchdog, an inbuilt watchdog system amongst, utilities. It's absolutely absent here. This water company has absolutely no one looking over its shoulder to help you from the industry to go past the limits that you are faced with. So what else is left? Well, it brings you to the meaningful and very important inputs and comments and from the actual public input and the electeds. And I do believe it's world-class quality information that is brought to you over and over again in these hearings. But they're largely disregarded. I mean, more than largely. And we don't understand that. The people and the electeds of Rockland are the ones that are living in the water system here. We are the ones that are the evidence of whether or not a water company's efforts, works, submissions are in fact authentic, if they're effective, and if they are appropriate. And it's only really through the public, which is your greatest barometer of what's happening here, given that you're up in Albany and your talents lie in a completely other wheelhouse. But the functionality of water here, the health of our water, the abundance of our water or absence of it, the watershed protections, all of this, it is not a thing apart, because the water company is moving water from source to pipe and then releasing it. It is something that concerns all the above. and our reservoir has algae in it, and the company says it's not their responsibility. It goes on and on. I will submit more comments, but honestly, if you could look back through all the years, these comments are multiply supplied to you. It concerns me that that amongst the Public Service Commission, all of the commissioners obviously are going to be required to have expertise in the areas that are the PSC is most, involved with. But it doesn't mean somebody shouldn't have water expertise. It's all leading to the fact that the commission just cannot uphold its obligation on the front of water. It just is not, it cannot. And it really is requiring this to be looked at. Now, the public has been participating and providing all kinds of information over time. But like in this rate case already, some of my colleagues here have been submitting the investigative questions, and we see the water company coming back with, no response, will not answer. And this is what I believe is an area of regulatory oversight and ability to create change. If the commission will say to this water company, that is not acceptable, you must answer these questions. These questions will provide important information that we ourselves need to make determinations. That day of you thinking that you are all above the people of the place that you serve is over. It has to go. It has to go like that. Otherwise, this system, in case it could get fixed, like, a sweater that's unraveling, they say stitch in time, it's going to be such a runaway situation that the commission is going to be faced with many more matters of health and safety and inequity. We're still at a tipping point of balance, and that is the word I'm looking for here. The same way the commission is very concerned about balancing Excel spreadsheets on finance, it must balance this abuse of power in our watersheds. They have made decisions and that are not in the best interest of Rockland. They have submitted to you many documents that are effuse. And from what experts have said looking at it, they are full of occlusion and they're not full of answers that are really, truly matched to what's happening. I can't say more than that. I'm not in that field of expertise, but I know for a fact that you could see that in one very, very important case. Last week, you were submitted a letter by the fire commissioners, the County Fire Chief Association, a letter last week with a report attached by senior water system analyst, John Hawk. And I hope that has reached your attention, or that it will immediately. The report that's attached will bring to your attention that the Evergreen fire that happened in Rockland County, it contains everything I'm talking about, everything you need to know. That letter will tell you how the investigation of that fire was inadequate, how the water system was inadequate, how the company response was inadequate. It needs a whole nother analyst and it needs a whole nother review. And right now the company walked away as if it had no responsibility in that matter. And the fire people down here, experts down here, are calling for your attention on that. For some reason, the water company has this layer of protection, and it has enabled the company to increasingly, or companies, 3 now, increasingly operate in our community in a way that is above decency. I listened to I read the transcript of the April 20th technical conference, and 2 things stood out for me there. Very small details, but near the end of the technical hearing, Commissioner Moreno asked the company, "What about that $750,000 that you would put out there for nonprofits?" Oh, we've spent. Chris Graciano said, "Oh, we've spent, I think maybe he said $150,000 of it." And Commissioner Moreno, asked, well, will you get the rest of that money out to the community in the next 2 years? And they were like, yeah, we just really fell behind. We really fell behind on that. And I'm sitting here thinking, what is that? They come to the commission and, oh, we're going to give $750,000. We're such, community service people. Do you know in the last couple of years how hard nonprofits have been working to make it in the face of COVID? And this company is sitting on the money. Oh, we just couldn't get to it. I mean, there it is again. Commissioner Moreno says, in the course of your presenting today, you talked of uncertainties a number of times. And he went on to explain, reasons why there's a lot of uncertainties. I really respect Commissioner Moreno for picking up on that. That is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be looking for. This lack of accuracy, lack of appropriate, or the presence of disinformation. I really encourage that you please continue with the questioning. If you don't question, there is no questioning. Chris Graciano in that hearing also talked about all of these changes they're going to be making and how there's going to be a big plan for communication. They're going to have all these communication things go out into the community. And we've seen what that looks like. It's a big number on the ledger sheet. It's going to cost the ratepayers a lot of money, but it's very disingenuous. That's why I'm saying I would really, really, really ask the commission to please bring in experts. You probably don't have to bring them in endlessly, but bring them in on all of these areas so that you can get the lay of the land on what best practices are, so that your team can analyze these submissions and uphold the public. And it's really important that the analysis, if it's going to be done in-house, is supported by more expertise, by more public interaction. And we shouldn't have to just be thankful for little bits of time that we can get before you when we are a full-bodied part of the whole water analyst system at this point. I'd really love to see an ongoing dialogue that goes beyond hearings, the same way that the company talks with the Public Service Commission. It would be really an honor of anybody on our team to be part of that dialogue. We've had some conversations. I believe they were meaningful. And towards this whole interpretive capacity and the authority entrusted in you. Again, I said there were some simple steps that could be taken. It's really the power of the words yes and no. It really is. Yes, and no. And the no, very importantly, should be directed towards this company's tendency to, as I said, right now with the comments is the most apparent. No, you cannot disregard the public. They are a really important part of this process. And that's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we will go back through our list. I'll start with Jackie Dressler. And if you have called in, if you could please press *3 on your telephone. Jackie Dressler. Okay. We'll turn to Leanne Devine. And again, if you've called in, if you could press *3 on your phone. Leanne Devine. Okay, we'll move on to Jacqueline Dressler.
I would love to, but hello, can you hear me?
Hi, we can now. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, there's no *3 on my phone. I'm on electronically. So, which has been a little frustrating, the whole process. There have been brilliant speakers today. I missed one of the first speakers who was talking about how people who call in, could be disclosing their relationship to this company. I'm not connected to this company at all. I'm just a private citizen. And I'm very opposed to this rate hike. I'm very opposed to Veolia, quite honestly. I think they are very similar to Suez, who walked away from the table when they were supposed to be part of the task force on conservation and sustainability. and the Public Service Commission never called them back, didn't oversight this. There have been great speakers today who've gone into so much detail. And what I would like to say at this point, I did speak earlier today, but what I'd like to say at this point, and as Lori Seaman just mentioned, we are the forgotten zone, okay? We are the Bermuda Triangle here in Rockland County. There are so many brilliant people who've been connected to water and to great organizations and facilities regarding water and water quality and water sustainability, and they are being ignored. I would say that just maybe 6 of the people I've heard today between the first session and right now, those people have more information and knowledge about the water quality, water sustainability issues that are here in Rockland County in our very unique situation. And they have more information, honestly, than I would say the DPS staff and the PSC. And I feel that you should be taking their comments beyond seriously. You should be inviting them into a discussion, an ongoing discussion regarding the sustainability issue in the face of climate change. We are talking about brilliant people here who've spoken today, in the earlier session, and tonight, and they have great institutional knowledge about Rockland County and our unique water system. And I'm so tired of coming to Public Service Commission hearings where the same thing gets said and our questions never get answered. And the rate hike always goes through. And I'm really hoping that this time you are going to listen to the public, not just count the comments, yes, no, yes, no. You're going to actually take the comments of these brilliant people who've already spoken today into account and maybe even call them and try to have some sort of meeting, because they have more knowledge in their little pinky, apparently, than most of the staff or the Public Service Commission. And it is more than important that there be planning in the face of climate disasters for Rockland County. We have one source of water. We have a bomb train that goes around our lake. We have serious problems here with algae. We have serious problems with other issues, such as the company does not get in touch with condominium owners and multifamily people regarding health-related issues with the water. The PSC was authorized to require them to do this, and they still don't have a plan, and it's 4 years later. And there are so many problems here that can affect the public health and wealth. And I feel it's time that the Public Service Commission listens to us, listens to the people who know this county the best. So thank you very much. Now, I would like to say one other thing, that my sister Jocelyn DiCrescenzo was also supposed to speak, but maybe I guess she'll speak on the 17th. I hope we're both registered for that, because the more I listen to the comments of other people, the more I'm learning and the more I'm realizing that this company, Veolia, is not doing anything regarding conservation. They're not doing anything about long-range planning. They're not doing anything about education. They're not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. They may be doing some things to broaden their low-income assistance program, but they're not doing anything else. And they are going to be leaving Rockland County in a very bad state, along with the fact that we're going to be paying for them to be helping to fix another system. And that was discussed in great detail in the earlier commission hearing, the 1-5 session. And it's wrong. It's very egregious. And Rockland County residents, for the most part, are really upset. You might have had some callers on who work for the company or have some connection to the company, but I would say for the most part, Rockland County is sick of the rate hikes. They're sick of having horrible quality water. They're sick of not having this company be in touch with them when there are problems with the water. And we really, actually, I'd like to say at this point, we demand that you listen to us. We do, because we've been doing this for 15 years now. For 15 years.
And the PSC has not been.
And I think that you have an obligation to make sure that you have the right people on your staff who can have a deep understanding of water and learn about our issues here in the county. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And may I ask, Ms. Dressler, we did call Ms. DiCrescenzo a little while ago. And I didn't know whether you were on the same line.
We're on the same phone and we were having trouble. There was no button to press to raise my hand on this system. So, but Jocelyn is here.
I'm going, my name is Jocelyn DiCrescenzo, and I plan on speaking at the meeting on the 17th, I think, is
We
it?
hope we're registered.
I know we're registered. I hope you can check on that.
And Ms. DiCrescenzo, would you like to speak this evening, or would you like to wait until next week?
I'd like to say a little something, because
Please go right ahead.
it seems as if our lives, my sister and I, our lives are so entwined with water from the beginning of our life to now. We're almost 65 years old, and we have been battling for clean, safe, healthy water in Rockland County for at least 25 years now. And I do believe that, as my sister said, the people who've been on these calls, for the most part, the people who believe what we believe, are supremely intelligent beings and experts in their fields. And their voices need to be listened to. Their information needs to be poured over, because it is proper and true information. It's not misinformation. It's not produced by the company that wants to raise the rates and gives out the wrong information to prove their case, so to speak. And I'm really tired, actually, honestly, of the PSC's lack of response to the people of Rockland County regarding our water. I'm upset that I do believe the issue of having our own water authority needs to be explored again. I understand the timing wasn't exactly right economically, but things seem to be improving. So I do believe that that's a very important thing to look at in the future, in the near future. And I'm very tired of the PSC not listening. I'm very tired of the PSC taking what the utilities say as the truth of the matter and going along with the utility every time, much to dismay and the inability of many customers to actually pay out for the water company's bad decisions, a la the desalination plant. You know, I have to say this one other thing. For the desalination plant, you know, when a company takes a risk on trying something that they want to do because it's good for their bottom line and their stockholders, and that doesn't pan out, the people who are the ratepayers are not supposed to be the ones that pay the bill on that. The stockholders in the company, from their own coffers, are supposed to pay the bill. Now, we in Rockland County are still paying that bill, and I'm pretty furious about it. And I believe that the PSC did not do due diligence in that case. And unfortunately, I have a really dreadful feeling that you're not going to be doing due diligence in this case. And that upsets me, because you're supposed to protect the people. I know you have to also look out for the utility companies, that they're getting away with murder, and it's just got to stop. Thank you.
So we both thank you very much.
I'd like to speak on it.
And we'll let other people speak. One other thing that I'd like to say is, you know, I couldn't register initially for these hearings. The website was down. I was very frustrated. I must have tried 20 times. Then I finally did get registered. And then someone from the DPS did call me back and made sure I was registered. So I do appreciate that. And they did admit that there was a problem with the site. But this is the most unwieldy system. And quite honestly, I have to say that, I go to the Decommissioning Oversight Board hearings all the time, and we were having the same issue. And they finally switched over to doing it by Zoom. There are no big, great state secrets here that require this to be by, this terrible WebEx system. And doing it by Zoom, which most people are familiar with and have, will make this so much easier for public participation. I really encourage you to consider doing it, because it has been the most frustrating experience. Even today, by being registered, doing it on my phone, couldn't raise a hand. This is just, please just do it by Zoom and let the public participate in an easier way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate it. I'll just try once more. We had 2 more folks who were registered to speak by phone. I'll just check to see whether they've joined us. Jackie Dressler. And again, if you've joined us by phone, if you would press *3 on your telephone. And Leanne Devine. And again, if you've called in, if you could press *3. Okay, with that, I believe that we have gone through the list of all of the folks who have registered to speak at this afternoon's hearing. And I'll now open it up to any member of the public who is on the line who would like to make a statement but did not register to speak. If you are joining us by phone and you would like to make a statement, you can press *3 so that we can identify you. Otherwise, if you've joined us electronically, you can use the raise hand function, and that will alert us to your interest in making a statement. And I am not seeing any additional hands raised. Oh, we have one more from Ms. Kurtz.
So if it's possible, I guess I would speak about another topic, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I want to shift to another topic that I spoke about before, and that is the rate structure. So we're being told by the company that conservation rates have been very successful. We shifted to conservation rates, I can't remember exactly which year it was, but it's a number of years ago. In a report that was filed by Sierra Club in a previous case, conservation expert Jonathan Kleiman, who also filed testimony, stated that in fact, Rockland County Veolia customers show less of a decline than background New York State trends and the nationwide trends. Here's what he reported 4 years ago. Wintertime water usage in Rockland County is falling at a rate slower than the background or passive fall in water usage across the state of New York. And that is despite investments in marketing and outreach, conservation rate tariffs, and rebate programs. And he also points out that summertime water usage, which is critical because it sets peak demand and therefore system capacity needs, has not been declining at all. I think it's worth repeating. The company claims that the rates have been effective, but as this rate expert, conservation expert points out, the rate of decline in Rockland is actually less than the passive rate. That means the rate doing absolutely nothing in New York State overall. And in fact, the summertime rate is not declining at all. I'm going to be talking next week more about conservation in general, but I just want to address the rates briefly. The fact is that most people in Rockland County do not understand the basic structure of their rates. I'm going to say 99 point something or other, 99% of people do not understand. If I go up and down my block, I'm sure there is not one person who understands the basic structure of their rates. The whole point of a conservation rate is that people will conserve if they understand the way their rates are structured, that their actual rates are increasing when they get to a certain point, they're jumping up a tier. The messaging needs to be, first of all, the messaging needs to be much more effective. And we've said this over, all of us have said this over and over again. There needs to be clear and repeated messaging in plain English in the bill, not once a year, but repeated messaging. People need to see it over and over again. Those same messages in clear, in plain English, and by the way, why not in Spanish and in Creole also, and maybe in Yiddish, should be posted to the website. I asked a question, a discovery, interrogatory question in this rate case about why there was nothing in plain English about the rates on the case, and I was told, yes, there's the tariff structure is posted there. Well, I'm sorry, but again, no, most 99% of people or more do not understand how to read the tariff structure. They need a plain English explanation in a few sentences about the tiers that of their water usage. They also should be including messaging, simple messaging about how to cut usage. For example, directing people to change the settings on their automated lawn watering systems to once weekly. They should be particularly targeting lawn watering, which we know is one of the key factors in driving up summer usage. There should be automated alerts when customers are about to exceed a tier, are about to graduate, in quotation marks, to a higher water rate. This is done for wireless customers. I don't know about you, but I know when I get that text saying that I'm about to exceed my data for the month, I look at my phone quickly and try everything I can to cut my usage. This could be a powerful educational tool, helping people understand the basic structure of their water usage, giving them more control over their bills, and helping us to avoid expensive new water supply sources. The PSC must be requiring this from the wireless companies. I believe they could do the same for the water company. There are also basic inequities in the rate structure, and I'll say more about that in writing, but I just want to mention quickly the multifamily rates, which charge residents of larger buildings at a higher rate simply because they live in a bigger building. It's just common sense. If you live in a two-family home or a multifamily structure with 4 units or 6 units, you might be able to stay in that lower rate tier. Whereas if you live in a building with 100 units, you're going to have a much harder. With 1 meter. That building is much more likely to exceed and to the first tier and to be in the second tier, thus paying at a higher rate for absolutely no reason except that they live in a larger building. And I just want to point out that there's an environmental justice issue also. People in apartment buildings in Rockland County tend not to be affluent, or tend to be less affluent, I would say, than the single family residential. So in effect, they're sort of helping to subsidize some of the wasteful users in the single family residential buildings. Moving on slightly, this was the first water conservation in the state when it was first put in place. It seemed to us at that time, so we know that the staff has a lot of expertise, as Lori Seaman pointed out earlier, on finances, but we were told explicitly that this was the first water conservation rate in the state. We also filed testimony from conservation experts. The county filed testimony from a water conservation rate expert that pointed out some of the problems in the rates. All of that was just completely blown off. Nobody paid attention to it. We've also been told several times that nobody on staff looks at best practices elsewhere. Well, here you have a perfect example of some of the problems. This is the first water conservation rate in the state. This was years ago, and even now, let's say, when we're talking about some of the problems. And yet, nobody's looking at best practices elsewhere around the country. There are fixes to these problems. Other communities have encountered the problem, for example, about the multifamily residential, and have handled it in certain specific ways, such as asking building managers to report on the number of units in a building and putting that into their system. But the company simply says, no, we can't do that. There's no reason why we should have to do that. And nobody on staff is weighing the proposal from, so they're looking at the proposal from the company in a vacuum, in the absence of any input from elsewhere. They seem to be disregarding the expert testimony or the comments from the public, and they are also not looking at best practices elsewhere, which would make eminent good sense. And the commission should really be directing, this is really on the commission, the onus is on the commission to really reorient some of these practices at DPS and to really direct them that they should be looking to best practices elsewhere so that they're not looking at the company's proposals just in a vacuum, in effect, simply relying on what the company is telling them. It's time to take a closer look at some of the underlying problems that were pointed out by experts when it was first introduced. It's time for DPS to require much more effective public education, serious public education around the rates, not that just kind of going through the motions kind of thing that's currently done. I want to mention that Veolia did an excellent job of messaging last summer around the drought surcharge, which resulted in an immediate and dramatic public response. Water use during the drought was reduced by, I don't know, I've read two different numbers, 11%, I've read 15%, whichever it is, it was a distinct and immediate public response. So it really shows what that public messaging, what effective public messaging can do when Veolia uses the tools at their disposal, including bills and emails and texts. They can and they should be doing much better at helping people understand the rates. And we believe that they should be there should be a re-examination of some of the underlying inequities and problems with the rates, which I will point out in writing. One of the problems is that drought surcharge is layered on top of the underlying rate, so it exacerbates any inequities in the rates. Thank you very much. I will be putting in fuller comments about the rates in writing, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I did not see any additional hands raised to indicate that other members of the public would like to speak this evening. So I just want to take this opportunity to remind members of the public that you may submit comments throughout the proceeding by the other means that were described earlier and are also included in the notice of the public statement hearing that was issued on April 14th. We will also be hosting, as I mentioned earlier, additional public statement hearings on May 17th at 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock. Thank you all very much for your participation here today. We also appreciate the assistance of Esmond Brown Anderson, Sangeetha Kailas, and Maureen Jukes from our Office of Consumer Services for administering the session, and of course our court reporter as well. So with that, thank you all very much. Have yourselves a good evening. The hearing is concluded. We are adjourned.
We are, Joanna.
Thanks very much.